moment that moves me emotionally, that makes me grateful for the blessings in my life. In Ireland, it was seeing my husband take photos at Malin Head. Now, that might not sound very significant to you, but my husband does not take pictures unless I force a camera in his hand and say, take one of me so people know I'm here, okay? But he was struck by the beauty of Northern Ireland at Malin Head, which is the northernmost point in Ireland, and by the hike we took by our grandson. He said our grandson looked like, at 14 now, imagine a 14-year-old boy, right, a young man. He said he's like a giant puppy dog. He's all arms and legs, and he was like racing ahead and finding something and then coming back and telling us what's around the corner. And it was just magical. So even my grandson noticed that his Opa, we go by Opa and Oma, took some pictures. And it was a moment for me to see that my husband, who is not moved by travel like I am, did have his moment. In Turkey, it was ballooning at sunrise and being mesmerized by the topography. In Antarctica, it was about the icebergs. In Costa Rica, it was being alone in the pool after dinner, floating on my back, looking up at the night sky that was just so amazing. And it reminded me I need to stop and look up more. Travel teaches patience and empathy. These are truly things that, there are things in travel that are totally out of our control. So travel teaches me patience. The meaning of empathy, as you know, is the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experiences of others. Being in a foreign country shows us what it feels like to not understand the language, the customs, the expectations, the norms. To be out of our element teaches us to be gracious to those who are in our community, experiencing the same things. There are parts of our city we are not accustomed to going to. We do not necessarily need to travel far to experience this. It's here in our own community. Patience and empathy, something I strive to be better at. The truth is, each and every one of you here can be coming up here and giving this presentation. Everything I've talked about so far, you have your own stories and your own life experiences, times in your life that expanded your cultural awareness. My goodness, you don't need to go to Turkey for cultural differences. You can go to Texas. I hope I don't have any Texans here, do I? You have stories about the times you tried new things, events in your life that helped you gain confidence and appreciate the little things, times that taught you to be patient and have empathy. Use your own stories as great conversation starters and ask others about theirs. I'm here to remind you of what you already know and encourage you to have great conversations with family and friends. You see, the more I travel, the more I realize, first of all, I should have paid more attention in history and geography classes. It is easy to memorize where the Atlas Mountains are or learn about the Continental Divide. It is different to experience and travel to them. I recently returned from Costa Rica, and the Continental Divide was referred to several times. And I had not thought about the Continental Divide since I was in school. And it spurred my curiosity to refresh my learning, so I came home and read more about it. After visiting Iceland, I was on a Viking kick like you would not believe. Reading books and watching movies about Vikings, I was a little bit obsessed about it. After my Danube River cruise and visiting Nuremberg, of course I know about the Nuremberg trials. I'm a big World War II person because of our family history with my grandparents and my dad actually being born in 1940, weeks before the Netherlands was taken over by the Germans. But what did I really know about the Nuremberg trials? So I came home and I read more, and I watched a fascinating docuseries on Netflix about the rise of Hitler and the Nazi power culminating with the Nuremberg trials. On our recent trip to Ireland, we loved the castles, hiking, history, and caves so much. It was a wonderful adventure. Near the end of the trip, I brought out a map of Ireland and a highlighter. I must admit, I love maps. As my husband walked away, I envisioned him rolling his eyes as he walked away. I told our grandson to highlight the route we took around the island. It didn't have to be the exact roads, but the general path, and he was amazed at the distance we covered, and then made a comment about the long drive back to Dublin to fly out the next day. On the map, it looked far. After using his smartphone, he saw the distance was just 2.5 hours. He was excited to see what size state was comparable to the size of Ireland. And just in case you're curious, it's comparable to South Carolina. It continued, to my delight, to spark more questions about other countries. He had visited Costa Rica earlier in the year, and he learned that country was smaller than West Virginia. Travel spurs curiosity. Travel also gives me a greater appreciation of our own country and a greater pride. You may have heard this quote by St. Augustine: "The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page." Using this analogy, if you haven't opened that book in a while, it's time to travel. I would like to spend the next few minutes talking about places you could go tomorrow, next week, or later this year. Last summer, I retired as director of Northview Senior Citizens. I loved the programming piece. Although I planned events for many people, you can do these personally. One of the programs I loved planning was called Read, Watch, Visit. The point was to have a better understanding about a certain theme by reading a book, followed by watching a movie about that theme, and then ending with a visit. Here are some examples. Frank Lloyd Wright, the book Loving Frank. Who's read that book? He was a strange guy, wasn't he? So reading the book Loving Frank, watching the PBS documentary by Ken Burns, anything he does is amazing, and visiting the Meyer May House. How many of you, blocks from here, have visited the Meyer May House? For those handful who haven't, you need to go. It's an underrated gem in Grand Rapids. Bring somebody who is coming to visit you from Grand Rapids. I think they're only open 3 days a week, but try to get there. If you're a sports person, read Women in Baseball, The Forgotten History. Watch A League of Their Own. You can visit, you can go to the ball field, you can take a behind-the-scenes tour, you can just attend a game, or you can go to South Bend, and their history museum has a small but interesting exhibit called First in Their Field, the story of an All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. If your thing is outer space, read Rocket Men, which is the true story of Apollo 11, or The Martian, if you like sci-fi. Watch Hidden Figures, or Apollo 13, and visit the Roger B. Chaffee Planetarium at the Public Museum in Grand Rapids. Who has gone to that planetarium? Good numbers. I just was there over Christmas break with my grandkids. The Underground Railroad is an important part of Michigan history. Read Hidden in Plain View, a secret story of quilts and the Underground Railroad. Watch Harriet or Race to Freedom, and there's countless movies about the Underground Railroad. Visit the Nathan Thomas House in Schoolcraft, southwest in Michigan, the James Bonine House, also in Cass County, and there are 2 amazing statues in Battle Creek. One is just downtown with Sojourner Truth, and there is another one that is a huge, huge statue, largest in the United States, about the Underground Railroad, and it's a fascinating depiction of all the different people that were impacted by the Underground Railroad. So the whole Jim Crow era is a time of fascination for me. It is hard for me to comprehend those times. For those of you who are older than me, you actually lived in a time of segregation and perhaps experienced this firsthand and perhaps have memories of it. You can read Chasing Me to My Grave, an artist's memoir of the Jim Crow South, watch The Green Book, and visit the Jim Crow Museum at Ferris State University. Also, Idlewild Historic and Cultural Center. So Idlewild is a very poor area up by Baldwin. But it was, in its heyday, it was called the Black Eden. And middle-class blacks from around the Midwest would vacation there every summer, had homes there, and it was this thriving community. Desegregation, they didn't need it anymore, and it sort of went to shambles, but it is a fascinating story. It's a very small place, but still interesting to go to. If you're a World War II person, The Arsenal of Democracy, I'm rereading a second time. I didn't think it would be very good. It's outstanding. Or read We Bought a World War II Bomber, The Untold Story of a Michigan High School, a B-17 bomber, and Blue Ridge Parkway. What school is that about? South High, thank you. You can watch The Doll Maker, which is the theme from that time, and visit the Michigan Flight Museum. It used to be called the Yankee Air Museum, and it is at Willow Run. You can eat at Ford's Garage or the Bomber Cafe in Ypsilanti. That Bomber Cafe has bomber paraphernalia all over the walls. It's a bit of a dive. And if you really want a lot of sugar, they have a Captain Crunch French toast that's amazing. It's been open since 1936. So I encourage you to come up with trips of your own. Uh-oh, I am going way too fast here. How did I get? Okay, sorry, there we go. I encourage you to come up with places of your own to read, watch, visit. I encourage you to invite your friends or family. They can be in a different state and still participate in the read and the watch and the discussion. And I encourage you to think up your own themes that you are interested in. So on the personal side, I plan a mystery trip each year for my grandkids. My grandkids, I have 7, they are ages 5 to 14. It is a one-day outing, and I do not disclose where we're going, even that day, but I allow it to unfold as the day progresses. It is something that they look forward to each year. My husband and I started off in 2017 bringing just the 2 oldest grandkids, and then it was the oldest 4, and the last 2 years it's all 7. The first year that Owen, at the time, was 5, he came with us, and he was so excited to come. He has heard his older cousins talk about our mystery trips for a long time, and he's now old enough to go. So he was sitting in the car with me, and he said, I am so excited. I think we're going to the trampoline park. So my oldest grandson's in the front and says, Oma is not taking us to a trampoline park. And he said, why not? And I said, well, you've already been there. And he said, well, I know, but I wasn't there very long. And the oldest one's shaking his head going, no, 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 no. She's never taking us to a trampoline park. Oma takes us to places where we learn and have fun. So even though we have enjoyed this with multi-generations, they are places for all ages, and I encourage you to visit these places on your own. So the first one is Wolf Lake Fish Hatchery. Now, I am not an outdoors woman at all. It was a fascinating tour of how they populate our streams, rivers, and lakes. So interesting. So as part of the DNR, they offer tours, so you'd need to find out when their tours are. You can feed and view the fish in the giant show pond. They have a nature trail system. We've not been on it because we got things to do that day, but it's an area that you could spend more time with. And they have an interpretive facility. The tour was outstanding. And now, like I said, I'm not an outdoorsman, but it was so interesting to learn about this really significant program for the state of Michigan. We also went to the Air Zoo. Again, something for everyone. They have a little side area for the little kids with rides. They have flight simulators for the older kids and for adults. And the main building is sort of planes that you don't touch, you just enjoy. But if you go into the back building, these kids are in the back, they're in the cockpit of World War II airplanes, they're in a helicopter. It's much more hands-on in the back, a lot more beat up, but they absolutely loved that. On another trip, okay, now I'm getting myself confused here, because now I have the next slide. Now I see what I'm doing. Okay, so there's the air zoo. The one on the lower part was some of the rides with the kids. So our next trip was to the USS Silversides, LST 393, and we ate at a delightful restaurant called Toast and Jams. So Silversides is, all of this is in Muskegon. It's anchored in Muskegon, and it is a submarine used in World War II that you can tour. The onshore museum is extremely well done, and for those who cannot navigate the submarine ladders and port doors due to mobility concerns or claustrophobia, you can enjoy an interpretive virtual tour in their museum. It is extremely well done. The LST 393, LST stands for Landing Ship Tank, is an ocean-going ship capable of shore-to-shore delivery of tanks, amphibious assault vehicles, and troops. It is huge. It's impressive. It also features a veterans museum with artifacts and displays honoring those who served America and fought for the freedoms we enjoy today. Again, we ate at Toast and Jams, which is in Norton Shores. Another year, we went to Amber Elk Ranch. Has anyone been there? Yes? Isn't it delightful? So Amber Elk Ranch, you have a guided wagon tour through the ranch. You're learning fascinating facts about elk while getting up close and personal with North America's largest deer species. And when I say up close and personal, so their heads, you go into the like 1-year-old or 2-year-old pen, and their heads are coming in between the slats of this wagon, and they're feeding them, and they're like slobbering over everything. And the kids are squealing and loving it. But it's also an educational component, and it was delightful. The next is Country Dairy, which we're going to in May. Again, a tour, but it's way more than just cows. It's actually very high tech. In their manufacturing area, they're showing you how the cows, whenever they're feeling their udder is full, just sort of walk over to this one area, and then a laser beam is like shooting lasers at their udder to figure out exactly where to put the machine to do the self-milking. And so it's way more than cows. So my older 2 grandsons are very interested in engineering kind of thing, and they thought that was fascinating. We ate lunch there. They have their own beef, their own milk, their own ice cream. So I'm told that you all love ice cream. Pardon? It is the best ice cream. So that is at Country Dairy. And the Mack Woods Dune Rides. This is iconic Michigan. Who has been to Mack Woods? Put your hands up if you've been there in the last 10 years. Okay, it's time we go again. This is a one-of-a-kind 40-minute dune ride. It's thrilling, educational, and a blast. The drivers are funny, informative, and a big part of the tour. It is quite the experience on the sand dunes in Mears. Another year, we went to Anderson and Girls, which is a farm up in Stanton. We went to the Card Riley Conservation Center and the Paris Fish Hatchery. So Anderson and Girls Farm is a petting zoo on steroids. 140 different types of animals. They have wallabies, parakeets, camels, otters. It's just not goats and sheep, okay? They have a huge gift shop, which each of my grandkids get a budget for the gift shop. This is very important. I took my oldest with me with Northview Seniors one time. We were at the Studebaker Museum, and we walked into the gift shop, and he said, "Alma, what is my budget?" And I just had to laugh because they're strict budget, and we don't go over. So anyway, beautiful gift shop, bakery, farm market, and I would suggest eating lunch there with ice cream. We then went to the Card Riley Conservation and Wildlife Education Center. This is at Ferris State University as well. It's 5,000 square feet, not very large at all. It's Natural History Museum showcasing over 180 wildlife specimens from around the world. The Paris Fish Hatchery. All right, who's been there? A couple of you, okay. My husband grew up in Reed City, so this was like in his back door back then. It was the second fish hatchery in Michigan, and it opened in 1881, and it supplied salmon and brown trout fingerlings to the state. It was expanded and renovated by the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, in the mid-1930s, the depth of the Depression, and it operated until 1961. It was reopened as a park in 1976. It is in the midst of the Paris Ponds Initiative to invest in supporting this historic area. So I'll tell you, it's kind of beat up. You can tell that at one point it was expansive, and it is no longer, but there is an initiative to try to restore it. So I have a story to share about what's next in this park. So again, now that we're bringing 7 grandkids, I have some, and my husband has some of the kids, and we're driving there from Big Rapids, which isn't very far, and the oldest is in the front seat because he's the only one tall enough to sit in the front seat at this point. And I said to Parker, who is very interested in travel, I said, Parker, I am taking you to the Eiffel Tower in Paris. And he's like, you are? Oh my gosh, he's so excited. So we pull in to the park. This Eiffel Tower is 20 feet tall. It's made of welded steel, but listen, it was built in 1980 by the industrial arts students at the local high school. The tower was made from the bed frames that has been in the woods next to the fish hatchery since the Civilian Conservation Corps WPA days of the 1930s. So this steel has just been sitting in the woods for decades until an ambitious teacher and students made this. It's one of my favorite pictures. I do have to tell you, there is a sign that says stay off and don't climb, but they did, so. But isn't that a cool story? He was not happy. He did not think that was amusing at all. So last year, we went to Critchlow Alligator Sanctuary, Binder Park Zoo, plus the Skylark Ridge, and we ate at Station 66. So we're eating at like places that are conducive to kids, because to me, eating with my grandkids in a restaurant is just not a wonderful experience. I mean, they're not bad, it's just not my thing to do. So this Critchlow Alligator Sanctuary is a reptile rescue facility located in Athens, Michigan. I didn't know there was an Athens, Michigan. It is home to hundreds of reptiles who made their way there by adoption, donation, rescue, or from other institutions. Their docents are all these young adults. I mean, they all, like with you, they all look 16, right? Even though they're 22 or whatever. But these docents are knowledgeable and passionate. And they quickly, I have to tell you one of my favorite rescue stories about an alligator. So there was, in Detroit area, there was a drug house, a drug den, and to protect their drugs, they bought an alligator and put a chain around its tail and put it into a closet, so when you opened the closet, you were faced with this alligator to protect their drugs. So there was a drug bust. The police come in, they open up the door, here's this alligator, which had grown substantially, and so it had grown, they never loosened the chain. So the chain was like sort of choking off its tail, and so they rescued this alligator. What are you gonna do with this alligator? Well, they're taking it to Critchlow. They got the chain unembedded in there, if that's a word, and then they made this donation. So you go there, you see this alligator with a funky tail, and you're wondering what happened. That's what happened. And another one is 2 college kids that were feeding it hamburger and pizzas, and then guess what? Their alligator grew, and they said, we can't care for it in our room anymore in college, and so they donated it. So every single one of these had a story. The middle one is the youngest granddaughter who's not really all that thrilled about alligators, but these tortoises, you can pay extra to like clean them or hold them or whatever. And my fear was these alligators would be sunning themselves and not moving at all. But you buy alligator food, you throw that in, and oh my gosh, they move, let me tell you. The kids loved it, just loved it. At Binder Park Zoo, we certainly enjoyed the zoo part of it, but they also have something called Skylark Ridge, which is ziplining and in a climbing thing. And even the 14-year-old was a little nervous. It's that big, and he's a big kid. But it was that big, and then they had one for the younger kids, and then they had one for the older kids. So they really enjoyed that at the Binder Park Zoo in Skylark Ridge. So my hope with these mystery trips and other adventures is that by leaving home behind, they will find new things to be interested in. They may be more appreciative of what they have at home. They will become more tolerant of other cultures and people. They will learn new coping skills, which will make them stronger. And it is hard for any of us to evolve if our surroundings never change. I think you'll agree that really travel is the best form of education. So just really quickly, a few more things around any of these small museums, Heiser House in Plainfield Township, Coopersville has a wonderful one, Newaygo as well, Lowell, Fallisburg, which I just found out how to really, it's not Fallsburg, it's Fallisburg. They have a wonderful little village, and Rockford. But my favorite is probably Allegan County Museum. So Allegan was really impressed with this little town, but their museum is a Victorian house on the street, which is where the sheriff lived with his wife, who did most of the work, from what I understand. And behind the Victorian home was 3 levels of jail cells. And up until I believe it was 1961, the sheriff had to live where the jail was for the county. Okay? So in this museum, they have this beautiful Victorian with all the furniture in it, and then you go out the back, and there's 3 floors of jail cells. So one of the areas is just, this is like how they housed inmates, right? Another level, there's each jail cell's a little vignette. This is what a dental office was in the 1920s. This is what a pharmacy looked like. This is where a barber shop looked like. They've done a really, really good job in Allegan, and I'm very impressed with that. So any of those small museums, I encourage you to go to. The Kent County Recycling Center has a great tour. Founders Brewery has a great tour. Just beyond Grand Rapids is Engine House number 5 in Allendale. Has anyone been there? A couple of you. They moved it from Monroe and Leonard brick by brick, and the guy owned property in Allendale. That's how it ended up in Allendale. And some of my people, when we went there, they're like, that was on my route from home to school. I used to walk by that firehouse all the time. But they've done a really good job at that Engine House number 5. Day trips from here, the Holocaust Memorial Center in Farmington Hills, incredible. Historic homes, Alden B. Dow home you went to last fall, Kellogg Manor House, Honolulu House in Marshall, Felt Estate in Saugatuck, to name a few. The historic Jackson State Prison, Michigan State Capitol. When's the last time you've been to the Capitol? Probably a long time. Ford's Rouge River Plant Tour, and so much more. And you're like, okay, I can't drive that far anymore. That's too far away. There are opportunities to get your travel fix here without really even traveling. So the CALL program, Calvin University's program for senior citizens, they have a travel log. Osher Lifelong Learning, Alley, which is at Aquinas, they have travel log, and they have so much more. So does the CALL program. Grand Rapids Running Tours, I don't know if Caroline Cook, has Caroline been here before, Lou? No? Has Caroline been here? You guys need to have her come in sometime. She's an amazing woman who gives walking tours, step-on guides, and speaking opportunities. And one that I didn't expect to tell you about is a place called Amped Reality. It is on 28th Street, and it is a virtual reality place. And so I'm like, my grandkids don't need one more thing to own. Nothing, okay? So we give them experiences. And so we took them to Amped Reality, and they're doing whatever they're doing. And Greg, the owner, is like, well, what do you want to do? So we put on the virtual reality helmet, and we were in a bomber, World War II bomber, bombing Berlin. The audio is actual audio from an airplane that's bombing Berlin. And you're up there, and you are looking out windows, and you see the flames, and you see the flight engineer behind you, and the co-pilot. It was so realistic. It was pretty incredible. They have all kinds of virtual reality things to do with travel as well, okay? So as I wrap up, I would like to invite you to visit my table. I have some things coming up that you are more than welcome to ask me about. I also want to thank you for your time and attention, and I never pass up an opportunity to showcase travel. So whether you don't have to go abroad, you just have to go out your door, and that's what I'm really here to try to re-inspire you. And it sounds like so many of you already do, and kudos to you for doing that. So thank you so much for your hospitality. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you for coming. And I asked the weather to hold off at least till 3 o'clock, so I think they listened to me. We're all good. Thanks.